So this morning we're going to take a look at the next verse, which is, if a bhikshuni takes delight in the Dharma and in the renunciate life, has a sense of personal integrity and remorse, and takes delight in learning the precepts, she should study these 7 Vinayas. So there's a few words in this verse that I thought we'd zero in on. Remorse is not a word that works for me. I think that word can be better understood with the word regret, which is what I just mentioned in the motivation. And I thought, instead of just, reading off what I think integrity is or what the online dictionary thinks integrity is, I thought we'd listen to an example from someone's life that we know very well, and then we can maybe come as a group to some kind of ideas about what integrity means. So, I'm sure you've read this speech before. This is His Holiness the Dalai Lama's acceptance speech when he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989. And it's a very beautiful acceptance speech. And so let's listen to this, and then we can briefly discuss what integrity means in relation to how this person holds it. Your Majesty, members of the Noble Committee, brothers and sisters, I'm very happy to be here with you today to receive the Nobel Peace Prize for Peace. I feel honored, humbled, and deeply moved that you should give this important prize to a simple monk from Tibet. I'm no one special, but I believe the prize is a recognition of the true values of altruism, love, compassion, and nonviolence, which I try to practice in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha and the great sages of India and Tibet. I accept the prize with profound gratitude on behalf of the oppressed everywhere, for all those who struggle for freedom and work for world peace. I accept it as a tribute to the man who founded the modern tradition of nonviolent action for change, Mahatma Gandhi, whose life taught and inspired me. And of course, I accept it on behalf of the 6 million Tibetan people, my brave countrymen and women inside Tibet, who have suffered and continue to suffer so much. They confront a calculated and systematic strategy aimed at the destruction of their national and cultural identities. The prize reaffirms our conviction that with truth, courage, and determination as our weapons, Tibet will be liberated. No matter what part of the world we come from, we are all basically the same human beings. We all seek happiness and try to avoid suffering. We have the same basic human needs and concerns. All of us human beings want freedom and the right to determine our own destiny as individuals and as peoples. That is human nature. The great changes that are taking place everywhere in the world, from Eastern Europe to Africa, are a clear indication of this. In China, the popular movement for democracy was crushed by brutal force in June of this year. But I don't believe the demonstrations were in vain, because the spirit of freedom was rekindled among the Chinese people, and China cannot escape the impact of this spirit of freedom sweeping many parts of the world. The brave students and their supporters show the Chinese leadership and the world the human face of that great nation. Last week, a number of Tibetans were once again sentenced to prison terms of up to 19 years at a mass show trial, possibly intended to frighten the population before today's event. Their only crime was the expression of the widespread desire of Tibetans for the restoration of their beloved country's independence. The suffering of our people during the past 40 years of occupation is well documented. Ours has been a long struggle. We know our cause is just. Because violence can only breed more violence and suffering, our struggle must remain nonviolent and free of hatred. We are trying to end the suffering of our people, not to inflict suffering upon others. It's with this in mind that I proposed negotiations between Tibet and China on numerous occasions. In 1987, I made specific proposals in a 5-point plan for the restoration of peace and human rights in Tibet. This included the conversion of the entire Tibetan plateau into a zone of ahimsa, a sanctuary of peace and nonviolence, where human beings and nature can live in peace and harmony. Last year I elaborated on that plan in Strasbourg at the European Parliament. I believe the ideas I expressed on those occasions are both realistic and reasonable, although they have been criticized by some of my people as being too conciliatory. Unfortunately, China's leaders have not responded positively to the suggestions we have made, which included important concessions. If this continues, we will be compelled to reconsider our position. Any relationship between Tibet and China will have to be based on the principle of equality, respect, trust, and mutual benefit. It will also have to be based on the principle which the wise rulers of Tibet and of China laid down in a treaty as early as 823 AD, carved on the pillar which still stands today in front of the Jokang, Tibet's holiest shrine in Lhasa. And it reads, "Tibetans will live happily in the great land of Tibet, and the Chinese will live happily in the great land of China. As a Buddhist monk, my concern extends to all members of the human family and indeed to all sentient beings who suffer. I believe all suffering is caused by ignorance. People inflict pain on others in the selfish pursuit of their happiness or satisfaction. Yet true happiness comes from a sense of inner peace and contentment, which in turn must be achieved through the cultivation of altruism, of love, and compassion, and elimination of ignorance, selfishness, and greed. The problems we face today, violent conflicts, destruction of nature, poverty, hunger, and so on, are human-created problems which can be resolved through human effort, understanding, and the development of a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood. We need to cultivate a universal responsibility for one another and the planet we share. Although I have found my own Buddhist religion helpful in generating love and compassion, even for those we consider our enemies, I am convinced that everyone can develop a good heart and a sense of universal responsibility with or without religion. With the ever-growing impact of science on our lives, religion and spirituality have a greater role to play by reminding us of our humanity. There is no contradiction between the two. Each gives us a valuable insight into the other. Both science and the teaching of the Buddha tell us of the fundamental unity of all things. This understanding is crucial if we're to take positive and decisive action on the pressing global concern with the environment. I believe all religions pursue the same goals, that of cultivating human goodness and bringing happiness to all human beings, though the means might appear different and the ends are the same. As we enter the final decade of this century, I'm optimistic that the ancient values that have sustained mankind are today reaffirming themselves to prepare us for a kinder, happier 21st century. I pray for all of us, oppressor and friend, that together we succeed in building a better world through human understanding and love, and that in doing so we may reduce the pain and suffering of all sentient beings. His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So that was 1989. So in light of what we know of His Holiness and what he has done, his entire life, what do you think defines integrity? How does he live his life in a way that shows that?
He continues to show kindness, compassion to everyone, but he never wavers.
Mm-hmm.
What he says he believes in, and that's very essential.
Yeah. I think that's a key component with integrity, that we don't waver from it, from our values.
But in his heart of hearts, responding to the situation non-violently without hatred continues. So there's something about integrity that we hold that deeply in our hearts despite the outcome.
Right.
There's something about,
right.
I mean, he's got long-term goals beyond this life, I'm sure. So whatever he sees creating a confidence. But for me sometimes, integrity means no matter what the outcome, I stay very true to something that is not only fundamentally beneficial to my own mind, something that's beneficial in the bigger picture. Personal integrity is not just about what I value, but does what I value actually encourage peace and harmony? A lot of people have values that are totally in contradiction to it. For peace and harmony.
Yeah.
So personal
Good
integrity
point.
is bigger, bigger
So I think that's really well said, Venerable Samke. and that we are really clear about what our values are, and that our actions and our words are in line with these values that we hold, that, support harmony and peace. So with that very stunning speech as the backdrop, I thought I'd pose 4 questions, and now we're going to do this next part like we do Sharing the Dharma Day. So if you've never been to Sharing the Dharma Day, now you get a little taste of what this is like. So I'm going to read out 4 questions for us to reflect on. I have copies of the questions, so you don't have to write them down. But the first time you hear them, you'll just sit quietly and listen to the questions. And we'll take it from there. So when you think of someone who is living life with integrity, who comes to mind? And what is it that they do and say that reveals this quality? The second question, how can observing and keeping the precepts that you currently hold, whether they're monastic or the 5 lay precepts or the 8 Mahayana precepts that we keep for 24 hours, how does holding a precept or precepts grow our integrity? And third question, when you reflect on the 8 worldly concerns, and I'll list them right now: attachment to getting and keeping material things, aversion to not getting those things or being separated from them, attachment to praise, hearing nice words and feeling encouraged, aversion to getting blamed, ridiculed, and criticized, attachment to having a good reputation, aversion to having a bad reputation, attachment to sense pleasures, aversion to unpleasant experiences. So of those, which most readily derail you from living with integrity? And the fourth question, think of what you have taken delight in learning in the past. What was it that inspired you to pursue the topic? And how can you think about cultivating delight in learning the precepts, whichever ones you hold or aspire to hold?